started recording. So today we're looking at Yuschav Arly. I chose this picture because although it's quite complicated, there's a lot of nice, easy, basic shapes for us to have a go at. So I'm going to start just drawing the head. So same as what we've done before, what we've learnt before. I'm just going to draw that oval shape that comes down at the bottom, and then I'm going to put in the guidelines, so a centre line running down the middle, an eye line that runs halfway between the top of the head and the bottom of the chin, a nose line that's halfway between the eye line and the bottom of the chin. And because her mouth's slightly smiling, it's a little bit closer to the bottom of her nose than it is the bottom of the chin, so just above halfway we're going to make that mark. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to come down to her shoulders. So we're going to draw, although we can't see this side of the neck, we're going to draw it in anyway. And we're going to look at the way her shoulders go. So if we look here, we can see her collarbone, and it sort of goes diagonally down towards the centre, and we can join that line up, and then we can do a curved like C shape for her shoulder, and then just drop that down to the edge of the page. And then on the other side, although we can't see a collarbone this time, we can assume, because this shoulder's slightly higher than that it's going more horizontal. And again, we can have our curve going down to the bottom. Now we're going to just sketch in roughly where the hand's going to be. So the hand is a little way away from the face, so there's quite a little bit of a distance there. So we're going to work on almost seeing her knuckles as a diagonal line here. So we're going to look at roughly where that her smallest finger knuckle would be, and then just a line going up, and that represents that line of knuckles there, and then another diagonal line coming back down where her hand is, and then her arm just straightens up and goes off the edge of the page. Going back up to the last knuckle, another line that's almost parallel to this line here, another line coming down, curves in a little bit, and then straightens on down. And then we'll start putting in some circles that represent the knuckles. So very lightly, just do one, try and make sure they're roughly the same size and space apart, 2, 3, and then the last one's right on the edge of a hand, so put that in. Then we're going to do the fingers, so we're going to start with the main finger that we can see the most of, and that's going to start from the side of the hand, come up, curve around, and then come back down, so it's sort of almost coming back to join this circle here. The next finger is sort of curving off a little bit, so that's almost like a C shape. And then the next finger is very, very similar, just a little bit smaller. And then the last one is a diagonal line that's just going back. Okay, so before we start the parrot, we need to make sure our face is right, so we end up with the parrot in the right place. So we're going to come down to the nose line first, and we're just going to start on the bottom of the nose. We're going to do a U shape that represents the bit between her nostrils, and then that's going to curve up and curve around. So we've got the side of the nostril in place. We can see a fainter line where the tip of her nose is casting a slight shadow, and that can run up a little bit like that. On the other side, we see the other nostril. Remember not to make your nose too thin and narrow. And we can get a slightly curved C-shaped line there, then her nostril, and then that comes down to the tip again. When we've got that in place, we can use the nose to figure out where the eye should be. So if we take a very light straight line up from the corner of the nose, we know that roughly indicates where her tear duct would be on her eye. So when we're drawing her eye, I'm going to do it so that the top of her eyelash, her top eyelash or a top eyelid, is going to hit the eye line there. So a curve, like almost like an N shape, a rounded N shape, I suppose. And then we're not going to worry about the pupil too much at this time. Another similar shape to that, but inverted, so it's more like a U shape. And we can also, although we can't see the other eye, to help us understand where it would be, we can draw another thin line, a light line going up from the corner of the nostril there. Above the eye, we can sketch in where the eyebrow is going to be. And then that can taper off. And then I'm going to come down to the mouth. Okay, so the mouth, I'm going to start right in the middle of the mouth and almost draw like a tiny little smile that represents the bow in her lips. Like that, so it looks quite strange. From that, I'm then going to try and draw this bit, this side of the mouth. So if you like, we've drawn that little tiny middle section of the mouth. Now we're going to try and draw this bit here. So again, that's almost like a longer sweeping curve going back. And then on the other side, it smirks up a little bit more. So it comes out quite straight and then it curves up quite a lot. Like that. Now we'll put the lips in place. So the top lip, you want that line to follow a similar sort of curve as the centre of her mouth. So get the bow in her lips, bring that back down to the edge of the mouth on both sides. And then her bottom lip is fuller than her top lip, so that needs to be slightly bigger. And again, though, it is just a diagonal line down, a straight line across, and then a curved line back up to the corner of her mouth. I'll just pause there to make sure that the camera is focusing on what we've done, because we've gone through quite a lot there. Okay, so now we've got the main parts of her face in place, we can look at where the parrot's head is in relation to all those parts of her face. So we're going to start with the parrot's head. We're not going to do his beak just yet. We're going to do a diagonal line down. I'm drawing this line here in the corner. So I've drawn a diagonal line down, a diagonal line up, another one going across. If you look, it is just a series of straight lines, this bird. And then a very diagonal line that will eventually run all the way down here, but we'll just leave it there for the time being. If you look really closely at the picture, I don't know how well you can see it, so I'll zoom mine in. You can see that the parrot is actually, looks like it's made out of cardboard or something like that. So what we're going to do is here where we've got our diagonal lines, we're going to draw a straighter line coming out, and then a diagonal line down. And that's going to help us draw the beak of the parrot. So draw a little line down like that, so you've got like a box. Now, on this picture, it looks like the beak is made out of lots and lots of different sections. We're not going to worry about that too much because it'll take too much time in figuring out an explanation. So what we're going to do is we're just going to try and draw the parrot's beak and look where it finishes. It finishes in line with this bit of the nostril, so we know it finishes about there, and we know it starts about here, so we can just curve that beak out and then curve it back up. And then the bottom of the beak is just a straight line across. Below the beak we have another series of straight lines, so we've got them coming out a little bit, and from the corner of the beak we've got another one that runs parallel. Okay, so now we're going to try and finish off this head shape. So if we have, I'll draw this darker in a minute, if we do a line going diagonally there, then there's a small diagonal line going up that becomes a triangle, and then a straight line across and a diagonal line back. And what you should have is you should have the parrot's beak and head. So I'll just darken those lines up so you can see what I've drawn really clearly. Like that. Okay, and then we can look at where the eye is. The eye is actually made out of straight sides, but we'll just do it as a circular shape. So try and roughly just draw that eye in place, and then a black dot for where the pupil's going to be. Okay, so now let's move on to the parrot's body. I'll just zoom out a little bit. So we know we've got to end up at this finger here, so we're going to draw from here, from this corner here, this corner point. So we've got a line that comes from the bottom of the mouth down, and then it comes back diagonally. And if we look, this line ends roughly just below her mouth line, so it's going to end about here. And then that will be followed by another parallel line running down as well. And then there's a smaller diagonal line that goes back to this finger. Like that. From there, there's a straight line that comes across. Well, it's not completely horizontal, it's just slightly, if that would be the horizontal line, so it's down a little bit. And then we can use that to help match up the rest of the parrot. So another diagonal line coming down on this side, straight line at the bottom, diagonal line back to there. And that's the main bit of the parrot's body. But then there's a series of diagonal lines that make up the parrot's tail as well. So they come off the back of the parrot here, and it goes in a little bit to narrow it down. Then you can get the parrot's wing in place. So a diagonal line at the top, two smaller diagonal lines at the edges, straight line down, running parallel with this line, all the way to the tip of the parrot's body. It curves round, and then there's another bit that curves round to the tip. We'll just put in a suggestion of where the feet are, really roughly. And they should be sitting, hopefully, on the finger. Is everyone pretty much in a similar place to me, or do you want me to pause for a sec?
I'm okay.
You're alright, okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to focus a little bit, now that we've got the parrot sort of worked out, we're going to focus a little bit on the details on the face and the shirt and the hands and everything else. So we're going to come back to the head, and we're going to think about where the hairline would be. So the hairline is usually halfway between the eye line and the top of the head. So just make a mark roughly where you want the hairline to be. You're going to do a diagonal line on this side. So if hair parting sort of curves around there, we're doing a diagonal line that way. And then a hair falls pretty much so it comes down the edge of her eye and eyebrow. It's in a couple of strands, so you might want to get them in place. And then if we just look at this bit, it curves right round and it comes out, then it comes in again, and then it lays on a shoulder. So we need a line that comes out, comes in again, and then lays on a shoulder. And within that, you can start to put in your individual hairs and folds of the hair. So you can start breaking that down into sections, which is what I'm doing here. So I'm just looking at where the main sections of the hair are falling, and just giving myself a general guide. On the other side, a hairline actually comes down a little bit to almost like a widow's peak, and then comes out, and then down, and we're going to finish almost like in line with the pupil of the eye. So that comes down like that. At the top of the head, there's like a curve to represent, I suppose, her crown. Then it comes out and curves around again. And this one is ending up just before the back of the parrot's neck. So if you're constantly looking at where things should be going on the picture, it will make things easier for you. Okay, now the hair on this side actually flows, do this quite gently and softly, actually flows round. There's a few strands of hair there, and then what we can see behind the hand is just all hair. So now let's go and try and work out this jawline and make sure it's right. Very faintly, you can see a little shadow here, which is basically where her cheekbone is and where her smile is sort of pushing her skin to one side, so it's creating a shadow. So I'm going to get a very light line just coming into about there that represents that cheekbone. And then I can use that to help me understand where the jawline will go. So it comes down, and then when you get to her chin, it straightens up quite a lot. So it straightens up there, and then it goes back over onto this side. Okay, so now we're going to look at her top. So almost where the edge of the hair is where the neck of her top is, and it's going to come down to about here. So we can just do a nice swooping line back up to there. Then on the edge of the collar, we can do another line that just follows that around. Now looking at this, I think I need to make the shoulder that I drew a little bit wider. It needs to come out a little bit further. So I'm just going to ignore use my guideline to help me get this line in place. And then maybe give a suggestion to those stripes that are running up the arm, but we're not going to get bogged down in them today because that'll take ages. But you could just maybe put a few of those stripes in. And a suggestion of where the crease is in her clothing. Okay, over to the hand. So we've got like a series of basic shapes here, but we need to make them look more solid. We're going to start at the top of the finger, and that flows into this hand shape, but it comes out, and then it comes down, and then it stops, and then we can see her thumb. Now her thumb's a little bit bizarre. It's almost like it's being cut off by this brown shape here, which I think must actually be part of the parrot. Maybe it might be its leg. So we'll put that in place, and then we can get a thumb in. It just goes really closely to that edge of the knuckle, and then it goes to where her wrist would be. It comes in, and then it goes back out again. On the other side of the hand, do a darker line that goes back to the knuckle, but stop before you get to the knuckle, and then do a series of darker lines that represent the next fingers. On this one, the knuckle is more pronounced. There's more of a dark shadow behind it. And that's the same really on the next one. The next finger, it goes across, it goes slightly inwards before coming back outwards again at the knuckle. And then you can put in your last finger that is almost, there's a shadow that almost defines it there. That curves round a little bit, goes in, and then the fleshy part on the side of the hand curves out a little bit, back into the knuckle, straighten it up and bring it down. Okay, so now what we can do is we can start adding some of the details. So I'm going to start on the eye, start on the top eyelash or eyelid. Press a little bit darker now because you're happy where everything is. It goes up towards the centre and then it sweeps down towards the tear duct. And the bottom eyelashes start in the corner because that's where they're thickest. And then you need to taper your line so it becomes thinner until it's a very thin line going back to the tear duct. Underneath that you can put some shadow and some shade in. There's a slight crease under. Don't put this in too dark, otherwise you'll make her look older than she needs to look. And also put a darker crease above the eye where the top of the eyelid is visible. And some very soft shading running towards where the corner of the nose would be. At the top, when we're doing our eyebrows, they're all in sort of like diagonal lines. So if you just do a series of diagonal lines that flick out from that initial line that you put down, and then they taper off. Okay, so now we're going to do her eye. Start with the iris, the blue bit of the eye, and just do a curve and try and keep it as round as you can. And that can be quite dark on the outside edge, and then you'll need a pupil in the centre. Then you can start shading towards that pupil, looking for the white spot that is just on the top of the pupil, and very light shading coming from the edge up. Running down the bridge of the nose is a shadow that actually gets a little bit darker because you can imagine her nose has got like a flick on it, so it gets a little bit darker across the bridge of the nose, but the main shadow runs down this part of the nose here. It comes down to the bottom. If you want to, you can use your finger to just softly smudge that to make it as soft as possible, and then we'll look at her nose. So on the edge where you've got the nostril, do a line that curves up and comes to a point, and then the nostril itself curves down a little bit towards the tip of her nose. On the other side it curves round a little bit more, and we're getting a darker shadow that will help the parrot's beak stand out. So get a shadow behind your parrot and a slight shadow here where the eyebrow would have started to begin. The nostril on the other side is not as visible as the nostril you've got on this side. You can't really see it. You can just see the sort of like folds of the skin. And again, that goes up. Below her nose, I can't remember what it's called, but you've got that line in the middle there. You've got a faint suggestion of that, so just drop that in. And a little bit of shading around the bottom of the nose as well. This bit of a face is in shadow by the parrot, and you've got a shadow that sort of runs from the corner of the nose to the corner of the mouth, and it sort of goes round in a curve. Okay, so let's do the mouth. I'm going to start in the middle. I think I got this line pretty much right to start off with, so I can just use that. Try and break your line up a little bit. If it's a solid line, it looks a little bit clumsy, so it looks a bit too perfect maybe. Have darker areas, break it up so it goes slightly softer, and then darken it up in the corners again. And then you can start doing the lip. A little bit like the way we did the iris, Put your darker parts of the lip on the edge of the lip, and then you can shade in between those bits. If you want to use colour in any part of your drawing, you can do as well, but I'm just going to be showing you how to do it using a pencil today. Same with the bottom lip, make your darker bits of the lip on the edges, but once again, try not to make it as too solid a line. And then we've got this like white highlight, so we need to be aware of that when we're trying to shade it in. Try and build up, be a bit softer around that area. And you might want to make that top lip just that slightly bit darker than the bottom lip. Okay, coming down to the jawline, let's just strengthen that up again. Make sure it's a nice curved sort of shape. I'm probably pressing a little bit harder than I'd really want you to press, because I need you to see the drawing underneath, but you don't have to press as hard as me. Got a little bit of shadow that runs round, and then we've got a crease below her bottom lip that just fits in there, and some more shading that runs down the side of the face there. Okay, so now I thought I'd come up to the hair. The hair, there's a lot of detail that the artists have put in the hair, so we're just going to make a suggestion of it really. We're going to do lines that flick back towards the scalp, where that little crease of hair is there. There's a little fold, you can see where the hair joins the scalp there. So just do a series of lines that run back to the scalp, and then you can start from doing some lines just like we've done before, where you do the lines come in, curve in at the top, have them flow down a little bit, just darken it up right on the parting, and then as you get to the bottom of the hair, or the midway section of the hair, do some lines flicking back up again, and it'll give you a much better effect. And then again, where it curves here on the shoulder, some of the strands of hair are actually going to come and just sit before her shoulder, and then some of them are going to sit on the shoulder. The ones in the background, make them a little bit darker than the ones that you've done in the foreground. And this bit we've got like curved C shapes that have been elongated. Just join them back into that hair. So you're just really trying to make sure that you create the illusion of lots of strands of hair, and the way you do that is by using lots of marks on the page. On this bit where it's sitting on the shoulder, if these lines are curving that way, these lines are going to have to curve that way. So just adjust your hand position and do a series of lines going back that way. And then try and join those lines together. You don't have to be too precise with this bit of your drawing, just to make sure it looks like hair, and folds of hair I think will be enough really. And then work on the rest of it. Once you've got that long section done, going back up to the rest of it shouldn't be too much of a problem. You just start at the edge, flick up, and then come to the parting and curve down. And you just do that for the whole head. Where she gets to the back of the head, they're starting to just curve off into the distance, so just tiny lines that come straight down. And then when we get onto the other side of the hair, there's a fold of hair that just sort of comes and sits on the top of the head like that. So again, start with lines that come from the base, the root of the hair if you like, and then come back from the top. Now we can start on this section of hair, same as we did before, a couple of short marks that go back towards the scalp, and then some curved lines that come from there. It's almost like she's got three main sections of hair, 1, 2, and this one being 3. I'm just adjusting my body so I can do a nice simple curve that way. You can just tilt your page if you want. It's hard for me because I don't want to keep moving the picture around because the camera will focus. And then we'll use the edge of the parrot if you like, which is here, to do some lines coming from the parrot back up the hair. And then that process of joining those lines up again then. You might want to put in a little bit of shading on her forehead just to make sure the whole picture holds together. There's not much, but there's a little bit in the edge. And then we can come down to the rest of the drawing. And again, with this section of hair here, just try and look for where the folds of the hair are in the mane, and then just drop them in. You can even start from the bottom edge of your page if you want, and then just flick really easy, simple curved lines going up. Are we all okay with that bit so far?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you for answering me. And then we'll go on to the parrot, and we'll just strengthen some of those lines, because although I drew them quite dark, now we've drawn the rest of the face quite dark, it doesn't stand out enough. So just go back in, re-establish some of your parrot. If there's bits of it that you think, oh, that's not quite right, like I don't think my parrot's wide enough, so I'm just going to make him a bit wider. You can just adjust. Make those lines a little bit bolder, a little bit darker. And you can also start shading in some of the areas of the parrot that are a little bit darker as well. So like, use different shades. So on these dark blue bits, I'm using quite a dark shading. The lighter blue bits, the top of the head, I'm going to do them in sort of like a mid-tone, so it's not too dark, but it's not completely white. And then bring in some of those lines down again. And I can get the feet in place. And the wing, just spend a little bit of time repositioning my wing so I'm comfortable with it, so I'm happy with it. Quite a lot of the time when people do drawings, they're afraid to move them about and change them. It's quite rare to do a drawing without any mistakes at all. And then again, you can just darken up the sections that you feel need to be darker. On the actual wing itself, there's a series of sort of straight lines that run down that I'm just going to sketch in. And this dark bit between the hand, I think, although it looks a bit strange, I think we need to get that in just to help the hand work really as we develop the drawing. And then the blue tail that comes off the bottom. So now really your main job is to just darken up areas of your shading on things like your hand. So let's look at that in a bit more detail. We need some shadows that run over the top of the knuckles. This finger is a little bit more in the light, if you like, but we can still use those guidelines and those basic shapes that we put in right at the start to help us define some of the knuckles and the shadows on those knuckles. So this bit's just really about looking at your drawing, making sure which bit's lighter and which bit's darker, and then come down the hand, because there's quite a lot of different shadows in that hand. So we've got a darker shadow running down here, we've got very light areas here and a very light area on the knuckle. So if you want to use your rubber to bring out some of those light, I haven't got a rubber today, but if you wanted to bring out some of those lighter areas on your drawing, you can do, and then bring those shadows right down your hand. What you'll find is when you're doing your shading, it means that you'll probably not need to use a rubber too much, because you can disguise a lot of those soft guidelines that you put down earlier with your shading. And then behind the hand, to help push the hand forward, is all that dark area of her hair. So what I would do is I would block in quite a lot of that area with quite dark shading, because what that's going to do is it's going to push forward the hand. And it's going to help push forward the parrot as well. The more lines you put into the hair, really, as long as they're all flowing in a similar pattern and a similar style, the better your picture will become. You can see those dark areas have just helped push this hand forward. And if you want to, you can go back in, re-establish some of those outlines, make them as dark as you want. It's quite a graphic design sort of style portrait, so it's not as nuanced as like a fine art portrait would be. And then really we can come back up onto where the neck is, get all those different folds in, and then just put some shadows in here. So we've got the collarbone shadow that runs along the top. There's a bit of shadow underneath her jawbone. Again, just using really small marks. There's a slight suggestion of the sort of like tendons that run down your neck, because you've got a highlight there, and you've got a highlight there, and you've got a highlight here as well. So you can just build up your shading really gradually till you get it to a point that you're happy with. You can almost think of it as if really the white of your page should be the very lightest bit. So if I was going to spend a long time on this, I would build it up so the whole face had a little bit of a shade on it, apart from areas like this bit of a cheek where it's very white. So you would gradually keep building up, keep adding to this picture to help define the different planes of her face, the different sections of her face, the way the muscles work. There's a little bit of a shadow that runs across her brow there as well that we missed out, and a shadow that runs just along the bottom too. So if I just move my iPad out the way for a sec, you can see that pretty much everything we need to put that picture together is there. And that's about it for today. I'll just stop the recording and switch back to the main screen to say see you all again. I won't be a sec, hang on.